Oh dear, Nigel Farage is still back in the spotlight after his bank terminated his account. And the right wing populist sees himself as a victim of woke banks and believes his country is on the way to Chinese conditions. In the midst of the turmoil, the boss of the bank has to leave. And according to the bank boss, it was a purely business consideration. After the bank customer had repaid a mortgage, his business volume fell below the necessary minimum value at Coutts, the subsidiary of the British banking group NatWest, which is geared towards corporate and wealthy private customers. And consequently, the bank informed its customer that his previous account would be closed. Instead, he could use the services of the parent company like millions of other Britons. Yeah, and I did that sometime. However, the affected customer is not British like millions of others, but the right-wing populist and former head of the Brexit party Nigel Farage. A week after he made the case public, NatWest boss Alison Rose not only had to publicly apologize to the politician, but has since resigned from her post. Banking regulators, government and parliament are agitatedly debating the threat of woke banks. And because, according to Farage's account, he had been debanked, that is, excluded from the banking system, because of his political views. As a result, he railed first in a video message and then in numerous interviews. It was not just him personally who were deprived of the basic right to a bank account and his future, as well as even the possibility of continuity to live in this country, and all of this would be impaired. Rather, according to Farage, his case shows that woke banks are threatening freedom of expression in the UK. The country threatens to end up like China with a social credit system where social participation depends on having desired views. If they can cancel me, they can cancel you too, is what Farage warned his fellow citizens. This warning resonates with a wide audience. Conservative politicians spoke of a shame. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak promised in Parliament that he would not tolerate political discrimination by banks and would defend the right to freedom of expression. Media commentators railed against woke banking. On the other hand, the bank itself and politicians from the left and liberal spectrum pointed out that Farage had by no means been debanked and that this danger did not threaten other Britons either. The politician, who likes to pose as the representative of the common man against the elite, is obviously offended because he's supposed to be content with the same banking services as the common man. However, the case is not as simple as the bank initially made it out to be, that Farage was downgraded almost automatically after his mortgage had been repaid. Internal documents that the bank handed over to Farage at his request and which he released in the course of the public debate, they show that the risk managers at Coutts were discussing Farage. Among other things, it was considered that Farage, with his controversial views, stands in contrast to our position as an inclusive organization, as they put it, and that the business relationship with him represents a reputational risk. Farage is also referred to as a racist. His controversial views on the subject of COVID are cited, as is his support for tennis star Novak Djokovic, who caused a scandal and was not allowed to enter Australia because he did not want to be vaccinated against COVID. Farage and his camp viewed the relevant passages from bank documents and the apology and the resignation of the head of NatWest as proof of their version of the process and of an actual threat to freedom of expression in Great Britain from the woke financial industry. However, this oversees the fact that the bank's risk managers did not take on Farage haphazardly. They were even required by law to regularly review any risks involved in doing business with him. Officials like Farage are considered politically exposed persons, or PEP, for whom banks have to apply particularly strict standards, especially when it comes to preventing money laundering. And this causes high costs compared to other customers. According to Farage, several banks have refused to accept him as a customer, citing his PEP status, or PEP, however you want this. And NatWest boss Rose also did not resign because of the account termination, but because of a serious mistake in the public debate that followed. To defend the bank's conduct, she confirmed to the BBC that Farage's dealings with the bank were below Coutts minimums. For example, a customer must have a minimum of £1 million in loans or investment from the bank, or have £3 million in deposits in their account. This information reveals information about Farage's personal finances that Rose should not have made public. The national populist Nigel Farage practically single-handedly overthrew the head of one of the largest British banks with this and changed an important regulatory aspect of the City of London. Alison Rose had to resign on Wednesday night because her bank NatWest and she personally had told some untruth about the account closure of the former UKIP boss. And on the same day, the Conservative government of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak agreed on a new regulation with the country's main banks. In the future, companies will have to give their customers early notice of account closures and justify them. That was said by City Secretary Andrew Griffith, and he said, "Freedom of expression must be protected as long as no laws have been violated. Hopefully, the industry will learn from this case." The NatWest Group is one of the 4 largest banks in the country. The original company was taken over by the Royal Bank of Scotland in 2000. When RBS, then the second largest bank in the world, faced bankruptcy in the 2008 financial crash, the UK became the largest shareholder with 71%. The abbreviation RBS proved to be so poisoned in the long run that the company name was changed to NatWest 3 years ago. The state still holds almost 39% of the shares. And then last week there was this bang, because Farage published a 40-page dossier that had been prepared for a Coutts review committee. I cited it earlier. And the body routinely screens so-called PEPs for their suitability of clients. And Farage, in line with standard international banking rules? Well, this is to prevent international money laundering, as I said, and other criminal offenses. And according to data protection regulations, those affected can request the release of bank internal documents, which Farage did. And the document alleged that the right-wing politician, who was not averse to insults, he once attested the then EU Council President Herman van Rompuy the charisma of a damp washcloth, and also had racist and sexist views. And there were also rumors of connections to Russia. But in summary, the customer Farage has a worldview that does not align with the position of the bank as an inclusive organization. I said that earlier. At the end of the review, however, the committee decided against immediately cutting off the business relationship. Rather, they will be let run out if the term of a mortgage loan expires this summer. The latter aspect was ignored by the conservative London media, instead focusing on the BBC report and its authorship. After Economic Reporter, the Economic Reporter did that, apologized to Farage at the beginning of the week, NatWest boss Rose then admitted that she personally passed the at least incomplete characterization of the case to the BBC. And nevertheless, the NatWest board expressed its confidence in the CEO on Tuesday. Only when high-ranking members of the government, and above all Chancellor of the Exchequer Jeremy Hunt, announced their outrage to the press, did those responsible come to the predictable conclusion. On Wednesday, the NatWest press office broke the news that they had parted by mutual consent, and Rose's interim successor will be board member Paul Thwaite. He was proud of the bank's progress in supporting customers, families and companies, as he said. Hundreds, possibly thousands of those affected see it very differently. For years, the British media have had stories about small businesses whose credit NatWest had cancelled more or less overnight. A corresponding Facebook group already had several hundred participants a week ago. And the conservative journalist Alexandra Tolstoy reported to the BBC on Wednesday about her own case. The bank not only closed her account, but rejected any justification. Well, Rose has spent her entire career with the company and has been seen as a role model in what is still a male-dominated city of London. Because she had repeatedly appeared in public on women's issues, she was knighted Dame Alison at the beginning of the year. Her annual salary was the equivalent of 6.1 million euros. And on the London Stock Exchange, NatWest shares fell by almost 4% on Wednesday, and other bank papers also fell. According to the Financial Times, major shareholders in the company are dissatisfied with Chairman Howard Davis and his handling of the Farage affair. The experienced manager had to resign as head of the London School of Economics in 2011 because the university had gone too close to the former Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi in exchange for donations running into the millions. He recently announced his retirement from the post of chairman by the middle of the next year. The financial sector is now faced with a flood of requests for information from former customers. The representatives of the 6 companies, in addition to NatWest, also HSBC, Lloyds, Barclays, Nationwide and Santander, said they wanted to restore public confidence as quickly as possible after their meeting with Secretary of State Griffith. And it is indeed something to talk about. I have big problems with the views and the words of Nigel Farage. But a cancel culture in real life, so to speak, is not the way to proceed. I have big problems with certain people here from the AfD, with their views, with what they say, and when some of them open their mouths in council sessions, I get so close to puking that I rather leave the room and have a cigarette when they are talking. But they cannot be cancelled in real life for their views. It's disgusting what they're saying it is, but still not a point to lose a bank account, lose housing, whatever. They are fascist idiots, but there are real limits in real life. If they go too far with what they say, that's the point for the courts and the district attorneys and to punish them. But that is not the way to go, guys. I don't greet these guys because they really disgust me. But I would not agree to them losing their bank accounts for their views or whatever. And that's the same with Farage. I really despise that man for what he's done to the British public and to a lot of people who innocently got in big trouble because of what he's done. But there are real limits in what a society can do. And if you want to know more about Brexit or politics in the UK, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.